Hello.
Hello, how's it going? Dave Fowler.
Yeah, good.
Excellent.
How are you doing?
Very good. So, the Australian Pink Floyd show keeps on going. You guys are always working.
We try our best.
And it's like that tonight you're where? Because it's like in probably the United States.
Yeah, we're in. I'm having to look at the day sheet. It's Wilkes Bar, I think, in Pennsylvania.
Okay, so you're
That's where
traveling
we
a
are
lot.
today.
And it's like that.
We are, yeah. And we arrive in Canada tomorrow. We cross the border about, I don't know, sometime in the morning tomorrow.
That's incredible. And you're coming back to Halifax October 4th.
Absolutely.
It's like you guys are always coming to Halifax. It must be a good place, and a lot of Pink Floyd fans, I presume. And just it
I
keeps
mean, Canada in general is wonderful, and the audiences are always huge, and they always sing along and give us probably, the loudest response of all the places we play. But yeah, I mean, Halifax is a particularly good one. I've played there a few times now with the band, and it's really fun.
So Dave, like touring and stuff and bringing equipment, how does that work, in 2022? Because I mean, you guys probably got a lot of stuff to lug in and bring at the show.
Yeah, I mean, we have a crew that do that for us, so
Yeah,
they
that's
take all they take all the stuff out. But we have a couple of trucks worth of equipment. We have all the guitar rig, drum kit, keyboard rigs. We also have our own lighting rig, LED screen, the lasers, the PA monitor rig, everything like that. It all gets set up in the morning and broken down every night, and it's a big operation.
because it's like the closest thing that we'll see to Pink Floyd, basically. So it's a lot of gear.
It is a lot of gear, and the thing is over the years things are scaled down. I mean, say sort of 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was a light would do one or two things. Nowadays it might do four or eight things because they can be multifunction, which means that we can have the same amount of lights as we would have done 10 years ago, but get a lot more out of them and put a lot more show on with them. And lasers are now sort of coloured rather than just green or whatever like that.
Dave, like let's say guitar rigs and stuff, is it pretty simple, complex rig you bring at every show you're doing?
Um, I mean, it's my rig is actually a lot simpler than Luke's rig. My rig is mainly just pedals and then a multi effects to fill in what I don't have in individual pedals because it's programmable. And then it goes into a couple of amps and gets mic'd up and goes to the front. My rig is quite simple, but a lot of the pedals are old pedals like a Dynacomp, the original 70s Dynacomp and sort of Pete Cornish P2 and all these other bits and pieces like that. That are really sort of drilled down to try and get the Gilmour sound exact. Luke's guitar rig has a lot more in it. There's sort of real Leslie's, whereas I use a simulation Leslie. He's got some real rotary speakers and all sorts of different toys. I couldn't even begin to describe that one because I'm not really sure 100% what's in it. But he's got a lot more older pedals. I think things like the BK Butler tube drivers and just more general vintage stuff. I think I'm trying to think. He's actually sitting next to me. What do you know some of the pedals, some of the bits? I know you've got a P1 in there, have you? You've got a Pete Cornish P1.
Yeah, and the Leslie's.
And the Leslie's, yeah. And Dynacomp as well. You've got older vintage Dynacomp and so the Boss CS2 as well, compressor, which is something that Gilmour used.
I should see a picture of it.
Yeah. So I mean, we try and as much as possible recreate from what Gilmour would have used, but unfortunately, some of the things that he used back in the 70s were, trying to get them now. They're going to be quite fragile and they're not going to be roadworthy. So we'd have to buy a modern clone, which would do a similar thing.
With traveling, you never have no difficulties, like let's say losing equipment and maybe arriving late, or at the show with.
No. I mean, everything's planned out. We got tour manager, production managers, that make sure everything is planned out and nothing gets lost because I mean it's all in the racks and everything like that. It's all in they're sealed the moment the gig finishes. You know, that's in and it's on the truck. And I mean, it's all built. It's not like we're putting pedals out on the floor for us to play. I mean, it's all in switches and racks and kept far away from us, and then the pedal board just remote controls it. So,
okay.
You know,
let's say the pandemic it probably certainly slowed you guys down, and it's like how
stopped us for about 19 months.
So
well,
you know, what did you do in your time? You know, when it was all free, all of a sudden to like do.
Yeah, I mean, all of us did different things. I mean, some people had to go out and get jobs. Some people had to other musical projects on the side, things they wanted to do. Some people sat home and just thought it was all going to come back next month, and then the month after, and then it didn't. You know, and everyone reacted differently to it, to be honest. I mean, I personally got on with a lot of stuff that I'd been wanting to do and didn't have time to do when I was on the road, and suddenly found myself with the time to do it. And I didn't have a bad experience through the pandemic, but other members of the band absolutely hate it. They describe it as the worst time of their life ever. You know, felt like they were just stuck in an apartment somewhere, like a prison, you know, being stopped from doing what they love doing. So everyone's story is different. I said my personal story is I had so many things I wanted to do and suddenly had the time to do it. Plus I had Lorelei from the band. She was living with me because when we got you've got to go home, you know, because the pandemic, when we got the word through that was it, you know, tour was off at the beginning of 2020. Lorelei sort of came back to London and was staying at my place. And her son, who was in New York, was saying it's crazy here in New York. It's really, really bad, and the restrictions are bad. And because of the visa situation, she could stay in London for 6 months. So she stayed with me. And we were very creative and a lot of fun. Did a lot of, you know, did a lot of things. So it was so vastly different for everyone over that time. But yeah, the band wise, I mean, it was awful. We were off the road for 18 months. I mean, at first it was, well, we're coming off the road from France, but we'll be back in Germany in a couple of months or a couple of weeks. And then it was, oh, well, we're now going to go back and do those dates in July. And then, you know, June came and it clear that wasn't going to happen. It's like, well, maybe the UK tour will happen in October, and then that wasn't happening. And then things were being scheduled for the middle of 2021 and still not happening. And realistically, earlier this year, we went out to do Germany, France and Germany, and we did France. And at the end of France, Germany still weren't open, you know, in April, end of March 2022. So that had to be postponed till June. So we didn't get to do the 2020 Germany shows until June 2022, which gave us a big month of touring and then a couple of weeks off, and then having to fly out to the States to start this, you know, North American tour, which of course is we're going to end up there. So it's been weird periods of a lot of time off, and then followed by really intensive touring in a way that's been so intensive we've never done it quite like that before. So it's all starting to calm down now and settle. It's I can see next year's going to be back to something that resembles normality a lot more.
And like that, when you don't do much for a little while, it's like tenfold. It's like everything's just happening so fast now.
Yeah, and I think for me it was, you get in a position where when you do a show so often that it's almost like you get into a meditative state when you're doing it, particularly with Pink Floyd music. And you can kind of get to an end of a gig sometimes, or particularly to an end of a song, and go, oh, did I even play that song? It was like when you drive to work and you don't remember the journey getting there because it's a drive you do so often. And that was really the weirdest thing for me, was going back after 19 months off. Is it took about 10 to 15 gigs before I was even able to feel like I was going through a gig and it felt just like it flowed out without any effort. I was really consciously aware of being on stage and doing everything for like the first 10 to 15 gigs because I'd lost that routine aspect of it, which in some ways is good because it's exciting, but it also means you kind of make more mistakes and you start to second guess, oh, what do I do? Is that right? Whereas when you're in the routine, you don't do that. It just flows out of you, and the show is often, sounds better and sounds more fluid. So there's ups and downs to everything. It's sometimes I want that excitement of feeling like I'm in the moment rather than being able to just coast through it, So it was a weird time. But how was it for you? I mean, do you play at all? Or just,
yeah, the show is kind of open and now back to normal, but this summer was the biggest, busiest, I should say, summer I've seen in years, because it's like, what do you do? Everything closes. So, and now everything's opening, wide open.
Yeah, I think the problem is with a lot of things now is there's still a lot of stuff out in 2022, particularly festivals as well, which are still hangovers from 2020. So, I mean, there's festival lineups around the world where people are going, well, these aren't the current artists, and the current artists aren't on the festival bills because everything's 2 years out of date, and festivals are putting on the acts that they had booked for 2020, some of which might not even be together anymore, or might be just going around doing it for contractual reasons. So the whole, it's a weird period in music at the moment, but I think next year it will really start to smooth out and become get back to what we call normal again.
And Dave, like being in a Pink Floyd, band, let's say, you listen your fill of Pink Floyd, like just to keep it in your head, because it's like you probably listen to a lot of Pink Floyd, I should just say, right?
I have. I mean, over the years, I've listened to a lot of Pink Floyd. I must confess, the Pink Floyd songs that we play live regularly, if you're thinking about like Comfortably Numb and Money and those sort of songs, Wish You Were Here, I can't say I really ever go home and listen to them anymore. I mean, after playing them 100 to 120 times a year for 12 years, I mean, some people in the band have been doing it for 34 years. It's not that I don't like the songs. I love the songs, but, it's not something that I just go home and put on for pleasure. But I will listen to the stuff we don't play. I'll go home and whack on Saucer Full of Secrets or The Final Cut or, one of the Gilmour or Waters solo albums. I particularly like Roger Waters' last solo album. That was, that's just a work of art from start to finish. So I still very much love Floyd as a fan, but I think it will be a big ask for anyone to listen to to listen to Comfortably Numb after you played it 120 times in a year.
Yeah. Hey, it's a question you got to ask because how fresh you want to keep the stuff, right? So, but you play them.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I do listen to it, because obviously it comes on the radio and you get situations. I mean, we had it last night. We played a casino last night, and then we're sitting outside, socializing after the classes are, and there was a DJ in one of the bars. There was like a bit of an open air bar, and they played loads of Pink Floyd. So we were then hearing all the songs we'd already played. But obviously they're trying to keep the audience there to gamble and drink. But so they're playing them stuff they think they'd like. But it was nice listening through, and you kind of go, oh yeah, no, we haven't drifted too far from that. That sounds, we're still in the ballpark of what happened. Because it is, I suppose, if you don't listen to the original one and you just play the same song for 10 years or whatever, you can drift from the original without realizing you're doing it. But it doesn't take much. You just one listen every year or so will go, oh, I'm doing that badly. I need to snap back into that. And but it is a live experience. The gig happens in the room, and the audience enjoy the room. And much as we do try and get it as note perfect as possible in a lot of ways, it's more important to get the vibe across and play it with the feel that Pink Floyd would have played it with in that era, because audiences en masse at that volume are not going to pick out a note that's wrong necessarily, a single note in like hundreds of notes. But what if the vibe isn't right? If we're playing a song from Dark Side of the Moon that's very laid back and behind the beat and mellow, if we're playing a song like that and making it sound like it was something from the 80s, and all the drums were really slamming and all the guitar sounds were over, it wouldn't matter whether all the notes were perfect. It would just sound completely wrong. So for me, the vibe and the feel and giving people the feeling that they're in that era is really important. You know, I think that's what we as a band do best.
It's like that, Dave. I really appreciate you talking, about Pink Floyd, all the, touring effects and all that stuff, and just that's all great, and all that's to come tour. So that's a interesting title, for.
But that's a lyric. We've had a few in a row. We had because of Eclipse, the last song on the Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah, it's all that you touch and all that you taste and all that you feel and all that you see. And I can't remember the words in the right order there, even though I have sung it a million times. I don't know. My mind's going blank now. But they're lyrics from that. We've had the all that you feel tour, and we've had like Everything Under the Sun, and we've had various lyrics from that song. So this was another permutation of that, and I think all that's to come gives you this. It's an uplifting feeling. It's not a kind of. It's not like you're chucking something in a box. It's got a lot of hope attached to it in that particular line. So I personally thought it was nice as a tour name, because it makes people feel like, well, you want to see what's coming. It's going to be great. It's got a lot of excitement attached to it.
And when you do name tours and you put good names in it, it does attract people also.
It does. I mean, that's a weird thing. 20 years ago, you didn't need tour names. You just said, well, here's the band and they're playing a load of Pink Floyd. And that was fine for us. Whereas nowadays, promoters want a name and they want, different artwork year on year, because it's kind of like, right, that was last year's, this is this year. And realistically, there's over half the show that will always be the same, because if we didn't turn up and play Comfortably Numb, Wish You Were Here, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, Shine On, all those songs, people would be disappointed. But of course, there are things that change. And like, for example, next year we're doing the whole of Dark Side of the Moon. It's the Dark Side 50 tour, because it's 50th anniversary of Dark Side of the Moon. So not that I'm promoting next year's, we're promoting this year's first. But so there are tour titles that are themed to it, but still we then have the greatest hits stuff in with it as well. So so whatever happens, if you come to see one of our shows, you're always going to get a vast collection of Pink Floyd songs from all different eras. I mean, on this tour we're playing stuff from Obscured by Clouds right through, Dark Side stuff from Wish You Were Here, The Wall, Animals, Medal, Division Bell, Momentary Lapse of Reason. We were doing something from everything, really, which is great fun. And I think that's where we get our best reaction, because everyone leaves hearing something that was their favourite song, which is what you want.
Dave Fowler, October 4th, you guys are going to be in Halifax again, and I think that's going to be awesome to see. And the Halifax fans or Nova Scotia fans for Pink Floyd will really excited to see the Australian Pink Floyd show once again. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for taking the time today, and I hope you have a great tour, and talk to you again later. Are you going to be there at the show? I'm trying to make it, yes. Well, then I will meet you there. I look forward to it. Okay. Cheers, mate. Thank you. Have a good one. Cheers. Bye. Bye.